Hey there. Okay, it's your turn, Faulksy. Let's do it. Okay, welcome to the Broderick Wallace YouTube channel, and it is my great pleasure to bring on to the show Mr. Martin Faulks, who has incidentally been my meditation teacher for just over 4 years at the time of the making of this video. So how are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderfully, and it's great to be here on the Broderick Wallace YouTube channel. I've seen your interviews, so I know that this is an opportunity to really cover things in depth and really to go into details that other people don't. So that's why it's something I looked forward to as soon as we decided we were going to do this.
Oh, me too, absolutely. And I know that you're a man who comes prepared, so we'll get to a certain stage, and pretty much the stage will be yours, because I know you've got a massive download and some important information to share. So we'll just do the housekeeping. I have the diary here, and I think we'll start with the traditional question, but with a twist. I've adjusted it, so that would be Martin Faulks. When did you first discover that the hidden forces are a real thing?
So when I was a child, when I was practicing martial arts, our teacher told us about ki, about the hidden force. You've probably heard this called chi in China, but it's ki in Korea and Japan. And we were taught exercises to do with this. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is a wonderful thing. But I've always tested things. My friend and I, we immediately started to put these things to the test. So there was a set of these exercises they said could give you the strength of 7 men. So we did them exactly as were prescribed, but found we didn't have the strength of 7 men. So we went to our teacher and we complained. And he said, well, it's not that kind of strength. It's kind of an inner strength. Okay. Or describe, what would that look like? What would that feel like? We wanted to get a vision of what this inner strength would be. About the same time, we were testing other things we had taught. Some of this might make people laugh. In some martial arts, they tell you these are vital points that you can strike that will knock the person unconscious, like nerve points and so on. Well, we really tried them and complained they didn't work. And the teacher says, well, they're very precise. They're very precise, you know, you've got to get it exactly on the acupuncture point. So we went to an acupuncturist. We paid an acupuncturist to mark the points and hit them with a hammer. Anyway, this is a bit of a sidetrack, but it shows the kind of testing things. Amongst all that, we did start to find some form of effect behind some of these exercises. So yes, there was a truth to the other. There's more energy than just the physical energy behind this, and I started to get a sense of this truth. And I believe, so here's an important thing, I've always had a strong sense of belief in this direction. So I don't think I doubted there were unseen things. I mean, there's a lot of unseen things, you know. You can sense wind, but you can't see it, you know. You can sense a lot of the heat, but you can't see it a lot of the time. Yeah, but I was doubtful as to whether many of the people saying they could do things could. So I wanted to test that and test if I could as well. So yes, I think I started from a position of belief.
And I assume that worked to your advantage. A position of belief is a good place to start.
Yes.
Perhaps skeptical belief.
Yes. So I think I've always wanted to see more. I've had higher standards of results than other people. I think that's still true now. That's actually still true now. Is that in my own exercises, I want to see actual irrefutable results, something that no one would be able to deny.
Oh, absolutely. And talking of these hidden forces, and we have to handle this respectfully in the right way. I would direct people to your video asking fish to form a line. It might shock a few people. So I won't ask you to comment on that, but I will direct people to that video. And we'll move on, because obviously we want to get to the sweet spot soon. So we'll move on to question 2, which is, can you please give a quick summary of your regeneration/reverse aging project that you have introduced to your audience in recent videos, and how this relates to a testing procedure in a group called the Rejuvenation Olympics?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So yes, first and foremost, let's explain what the Rejuvenation Olympics is, and then we'll explain a bit about why is this anything to do with our training and what we're doing and what we're interested in. So the Rejuvenation Olympics is a competition whereby you are tested. So there's an epigenetic test that shows your speed of aging. You actually can do other tests a bit like this as part of it as well that show how old you are. And these tests, they're not absolutely perfect. We're in a kind of a silver age of age testing, if you get my drift. Will get better as time goes on, but they're accurate enough that, you know, the Horvath test, for example, which is one about age, how old you are, it's used on, you know, in some countries for crime scenes, so they can say you're looking for someone in their 20s and that kind of thing. So people test, they submit this to an independent laboratory, and based on that, you would receive a position. You need to do 3 tests verified, and the average puts you in position. So for people who aren't aware of this, aging isn't as people think it is. Aging is about the state of repair of your cells. There's many different factors, and different animals have different kind of aging rates and abilities. There are some animals whose cell repair is so good that we don't think they age at all. There are immortal lobsters. There are immortal turtles. There's some jellyfish that if they want to, they can become young again if it's strategically advantageous. So there's a lot of potential here, and people can grow younger if they do the right things. So what are people doing? Well, most people are doing all sorts of things, normally scientific interventions, especially the top people, some of which you may find a bit uncomfortable to hear about. Some are quite extreme. So the less extreme people, they'll take 100 pills a day, and they'll take certain compounds which help the cellular repair. They'll take saunas, very good for repair. There's these heat shock proteins, ice baths. A lot of them will give blood. They'll give a lot of blood to renew that. Some of these people at the top there, they're billionaires, and they've had things like bone marrow transplants, or they have young blood intravenously transferred, and that's very effective actually. Young blood does tend to regenerate you.
There's something empiric about that.
Yes, so, and people have joked about this, but yes, employing someone to be a donor, you know, so they work out and eat well and everything, I think is getting into a very unhealthy area. And I'm concerned about where that could go, actually. Other people, they have stem cell therapy. They go in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, which puts their oxygen right up and then down a bit and up, and the variation causes a repair to their telomeres and the release of stem cells. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things to get to the top here because they want to be younger. Now, so that exists now. So important take homes from what I've just said. It's possible to age backwards, because your age is just the state of repair of your cells. There's various things we could describe, you know, how the epigenome gets a bit damaged, how the mitochondria doesn't work so well, how it can't send nutrients. There's lots of things that happen to cells, but it's generally just doesn't repair fully, and that's what age is. And there's a competition based on this. But why? Why would I be involved in anything like this? Well, now we're coming to some things that no one talks about. If you carry on through the path, there's a certain point where you're, after different stages that we're all aware of, some of the further stages involve studying alchemical things. And this alchemy, this inner alchemy, is only effective with an outer practice as well. Now, it's an as above, so below kind of thing going on there. Now, if we read the earliest texts in Taoism and in yoga, it's explained very clearly how this inner alchemy works and how it can lead to an outer transformation as a natural side effect.
When you say outer, to interrupt, when you say outer, do you mean the body or the conduct?
Yes, in the body. So here's a real big thing. It's a really big thing. If you read all the oldest yoga texts, and the same in Taoism, the sign that your yoga is working, there are certain signs, but one of the big ones is that you grow younger. So that's something changed in the years after, and it recently, that people don't have this association, but the inner union that you're seeking in yoga is regenerative. It actually leads to youth and to a change. And there are certain, almost all the old yoga manuals have methods of doing this. But most traditions have a practice based on this inner alchemy. And we can talk a bit about these. They're perfectly accessible. You can even find them online. there are many works that teach the energetics behind this. I mean, obviously India's a big place. It's got a long history. There's lots of variations. Now, in the Western traditions, there are things which are pretty similar. You can see they're talking about more or less the same thing. If you read the works of Thomas Vaughan or and Rebecca Vaughan, if you read the Rosicrucian texts, there's a few of them which describe the same process. It's just done a little bit differently. So the path will naturally lead you in this direction if you keep following it. Now, there are other outer expressions it could be. Many people choose a craft, you know, so their outer alchemy isn't their body. Or for many people, it's on a higher level. They're preparing for higher things, and this body is just a temporary vessel. But also, not many people will go as far as this training. Most people can't or won't do something of this intensity. So it's extremely rare nowadays for anyone to do this. You've got to say no to a lot of things, you know. You've got to really let go of a lot of the world here, and so that's a very important thing. Now, talking about distractions of the world here, I don't know if you can see in this reflection here at the back. Can you see a big cat walking up and down? So because I've opened the blinds here for the interview, I've got a cat just circling. I think you might see him later on. He'll appear back here, but you might see him in the reflection here. So that meowing noise, to let anyone listening to this, that's nothing to do with me. It's him. He's looking at the birds outside.
Oh, that's cool. Theo is
anyway. So let's talk about. So why many of these yogic methods and spiritual methods, even in the most gentle way, have a rejuvenating quality. So one thing that people who do the Rejuvenation Olympics found is that people who tick I do yoga as part of their regime tend to test younger than their biological age, than their chronological age. Their biological age is younger. And I think there's a lot in these exercises for all of us. So not just people who are extreme like you and I, who are very focused in this, people who are living life which is in the world. There are many beneficial things they can draw from, and I think they can be more harmonious and perhaps lead to better places than some of the other things I was mentioning. So that's why I chose to make the uncomfortable decision to actually compete. But there's another thing. Just like the 12-year-old me who was doing the exercises and got the hammer and hit that. I think there's too many people saying, I've got special knowledge, I've got excellence here, but I'm not going to show anything at all. That would be terrible for me. And there's some good reasons that they don't do that. It's a real test of strength. But I think somebody now and again has to step forwards and say, this is the way. And I think as modern world moves forwards and we're all starting to live longer and we're starting to they really are sussing out this aging thing. I think somebody's got to say, let's look inside for the solutions as much as we're looking outside. And yes, and maybe there's some areas we don't want to go. Maybe there's some areas where as you say, there's some things that's going a bit uncomfortable. I think we've got to balance that with with our inner potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting stuff. And I mean, if you meditate every day, twice a day, you get out, do a bit. And I'm not the best example right now, but I have lost weight recently, a little bit, and a bit of running, eating the right foods, this kind of thing. You're going to feel younger. You're going to get younger. But obviously, it's what's extraordinary about what you're doing and what you're saying. You're basically saying alchemy is real, and that is kind of heretical. And also, that focus on the inner state has implications of morality, inner balance, this kind of stuff.
Yes. So let's talk a bit through the kind of program that you could put together based on the higher principles to do this. Let's do earth, water, air, fire, and Akasha. Okay. But before we go on this journey, William, there's some important things in anything you're undertaking. Before you start on it, there's some things that maybe need to be resolved through contemplation. So the first thing in this path might be a why. Why we want to be healthier and live longer, and have you got a purpose here? This is a wonderful path for people who want to do good in the world, and in a sense, it's a nice gift to stay here. You see that in the Taoist texts and the yogic texts. It's always a gift to stay here, and that's an important contemplation, because without a sense of purpose and a genuine sense of being deserving to be here, you could sabotage yourself. Can you imagine? Some people might think, well, why there's all these people aging and dying, why do I want to be the exception? Why am I going to regenerate myself? There could be some of that. So dealing with how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your place in the world, having a purpose, feeling you deserve to be here, that might be the first of the kind of inner poisons we need to make into a medicine. We need to sort of change any sense of I'm not worthy and I'm not useful to I'm here to serve and I'm here to serve and I deserve. There you go. That works wonderfully poetically.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, this inner sabotage is a very real hurdle. And I mean, I get this, of course, as well. And the times that I've engaged in fasting, I must admit, there's been some kind of feeling of, I'm punishing myself here because I, deserve it in certain ways. And I will say that I'm obviously personally, but this idea of a mission as well. You start with that inner compassion. Look, I'm only human. I've made a few mistakes. I want to have a good life. I want to, give something to the world. And obviously the world is grating against us in this respect. I know I've got to do a speed awareness test on Monday, so it's always stabbing back.
Yes.
You kind of have to let go of that and sort of let the world work its evil through you in a way and have that compassion and say, hey, I guess it comes down to that imperturbable spirit and a sense of mission.
Yes. Yeah. So the speed awareness test is an interesting one. It is an interesting one. So
it was only 6 miles per hour over the limit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Waiting behind a bush as well.
It's and I find it's always at the wrong time.
Yeah, £100 straight out of my pocket when I was just on holiday.
Absolutely.
But these are all these moments when you have. It's like I mean, a good example is you want to sort of post it on Facebook, like the government, and sometimes that does happen. But the more times you can resist that, the better. As we've learned. Yeah.
But yes, with this speed awareness kind of thing, this is a bit of an aside, an insight. I'm the kind of person that is more likely to deliberately get cold and put a coat on, you know, let the heating system work. And with the speed awareness system, I sort of sat there, you know, so I got one of these. I ended up on the speed awareness course. And I sat there, and everyone's got a story as to why they shouldn't have got this. And I sat there, I thought, you know what? I've got to use this in a positive way. I've got to be the exception here because I have my own story. So I actually started training. I did training in advanced driving. And that was a real amazing thing. That's a real awareness training. That is that. So that sort of pushed me in the opposite direction. Yes. Anyway, but back to the things you need to change, perhaps in yourself, and these are the real important things. Before all the exercise, we'll go over diet and go over physical exercise, and again, we'll talk at it from an alchemical point of view. But the second thing we need to look out for at the beginning here is a sense of wanting it to end. Now, this might sound like a funny thing.
Yeah, I'm listening.
But often on the macro and micro, people are just hanging on for it to end. So when they're doing things, they're in a meeting, they're thinking, when's this going to end? When they're at work, they think, when's this going to end? Then their job, thinking, when do I retire? They're never happy in the moment. And actually, if you say to some people, would you like to double your lifespan? They say, oh, don't know, I could. And you realize they've kind of got it in their head they can hang on in this world as long as their body lasts. But after that, they get a rest. And the idea of extending that is not a good thing. They're waiting for things to end all the time rather than embracing them. I've even heard people say to me, there are some countries, you know, where 2/3 of people live to in their 90s. And some of that, I think, is about observation. They see other people live longer and your expectations. I've heard people say, oh, I wouldn't move there. Why? You wouldn't move there because you'd be healthy longer and live longer? There's something going on with the world there for them. They're not really wanting to be here. They're not really wanting to do things. So purging your heart of this, finding out what it is, and learning to enjoy the moment. Look into the things where you are thinking, let's wait for this to end, wait for this to end. And look where you can find the contentment there, and also making peace with the world the way it is. And that's a big thing, because one of the main strategies to make peace in the world is come up with some kind of convenient lies about it, and you know, to look at it in a sort of idealistic world way. No, make peace with how it actually is here. Come to terms with that kind of thing. So that's the second thing you might want to deal with before you start this thing. Is there's no use starting a path of regeneration and rejuvenation if there's part of you thinking, when's this going to end? And it's the same with exercise as well. I still get this. Some of these training methods you hear are really, really tough. And there's part of me counting down until it stops. Well, I've had to start getting rid of that completely. I had to start accepting hardship and thriving on it, or accepting repetition and thriving on it. So there's the second one that needs to be kind of sorted out. And there's the final one, and this is quite mind-blowing. Musashi, the great samurai master, he said, "To win any battle, you must fight as if your death is certain." Hang on, so I have to accept my death to win? Some people, the fact we're just here in this body, it's like a worrying countdown. Yeah, like, oh my God, this is slowly, just great. I'm trapped in this limited body that can get injured or ill and anything. You've got to live like an immortal. You've almost got to go beyond this. Almost got to accept the nature of it in order to defeat it. Tranquility is a lot of this training. Stress and anxiety, it ages you. The studies have found grey hairs actually reverse when you go on holiday.
Yeah.
So people, yeah. So relaxation. So you've got to find a tranquil place. Well, that's a bit of a funny challenge if you say, right, yes, your death is inevitable. Relax. What? Doesn't feel very right. So living like an immortal, eat as you would want to eat for your lifespan. Embrace your full potential now. Live as your ideal would. You've got to somehow go beyond this to be able to undertake this path. If you go into it with a sense of anxiety, and you do see this, you see a lot of longevity people, they're terrified. They're doing it because they're scared. They're not getting up at 5 a.m. and getting in their sauna and running for 5 miles and taking their 1,000 pills because they've come to terms with things.
Yeah.
They're powered by neuroses.
Yep.
And
it all ties in with the excessive focus on image, obviously Facebook and everything, and dating sites and that kind, just capturing this image of this young person. This is it. This is the moment. Like, there's a stress to stay there. But I guess you're saying, relax, self-acceptance, accept that you will age and you will, become wiser in this process. But, I suppose the focus is on health above the actual physicality of, removing wrinkles and that kind of thing, would you say? Or
so it is all connected. So us Hermetic practitioners know everything is interrelated. So these wrinkles and grey hairs, these are signs of age. Changing them changes you. Changing you changes them. But it's also outer and inner. Almost all the things that pollute the world pollute you, and vice versa. So there's a lot of it is vibrational. Here's the first exercise. So let's start with earth. What would it mean to master the earth element in terms of rejuvenation? Well, let's think about our diet first and foremost. The principle of sympathy says that all food has a kind of nature to it. And here's a wonderful thing. If you look at these ancient teachings like the Paracelsian knowledge and Ayurveda and so on, often, if you just trust them, they end up back where the scientific studies are telling you now, but they just have different ways of telling you it. So you're taking your certain herbs or spices just before you go to bed, and because the vibration is correct, the associations are correct, but the scientist knows you're taking them because they're anti-inflammatory and it helps with the healing process in your sleep. what I've found is if I trust these teachings, they get me where I want to go, and they tend to match up. I find out there's the wisdom in them. So you should be eating as your ideal would be. And that's an important thing, is putting this in now. People, most of us know what would be a good diet, but we tend to put it in the future. And this is an opportunity for self-mastery. Our body doesn't run very well on too much fuel. It actually gets in the way of our autophagy and our cellular repair and our digestion. If you make your body struggle a bit, if you make it be a bit hungry, it goes, oh, wow, I need some extra fuel. So it increases its ability to see damaged parts. And this is back to science. I'll tell you the yoga and the Rosicrucian interpretations in a second. But the scientific studies, one of the most conclusive things across all mammals is that calorie restriction or imitation of a calorie restricted diet by a limited window increase lifespan and health span. Because there's no use living, we don't want to live to 130 but be ill for 50 years of that, do we? We don't be lying around in a bed sort of with someone coming to feed us through a straw. We want to be able to stay healthy.
As though a lot of us can't even think about a pension or stopping working the way things are going. That's
yes. Well, I think they've lowered, so they've upped the time when you get paid your pension now, haven't? Is that what's happened? Yeah. There's been a change of law, so.
I have heard this, and just before you carry on, I think this might help with the perspective of the viewer, because I've been your student for a few years now. I will say that when I began the daily meditation procedure, I neglected the body. Now, I work outdoors every day anyway, so I mean, I've got a face like a fisherman, whatever happens. These wrinkles it's fine, it's fine. But neglecting the body for a long time, and I was just, hitting these exercises and trying to reach these particular mind states. And I'm pleased to say you were very strict in that respect. And it got to a point where it's almost like an inner understanding, embracing fasting. And I have for a very long time now. I just don't eat an evening meal anymore. So I'll have a big breakfast, and obviously taken up running just recently. But going into meditation in the evening empty, meditation is glorious and powerful. And I think that's just, obviously everyone's different, but that was my journey. It's like I can no longer ignore the body, because this is the frame that I am within, in posture. If it's uncomfortable, my meditation is uncomfortable. So you start taking care of the body, that takes care of the meditation, and then in turn, the meditation through the all these strange processes that go on actually start taking care of your capacity to actually implement discipline. And should I read the third question now so you can get on to all these techniques?
Oh, wonderful. Yes, do carry on. Yes.
Yep. So please, can you give a description of the actual techniques of rejuvenation you have employed in your daily routine? The stage is yours.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. So yes, but do please, your contribution adds another element, yes, that people won't get anywhere else, even if it's just your incredulous response to something else.
So always out my honesty.
Yes.
Maybe a little bit too much in the past, but progress has been made.
So let's talk about the material and the higher nature of things. Yep. So my journey's kind of gone like this. When I started this path of self-mastery, of perfecting the controlling of the mind and the understanding of these higher things, I very much rejected the material in favor of the spiritual, and there was a kind of like an opposites there. As time's gone on, I've realized that it's all one, and that everything has resonance and importance and spirituality as much, and the material and the spiritual kind of joined for me. This is where sort of it's ended up for me. So as far as food goes, I'd like to explain this a little bit about the Rosicrucian path and these principles from Paracelsus, very influential on Hermeticism. So Hermetic teachings say that everything has sympathy, has resonance, it's got an energy to it, it's got a nature. Now, this isn't just on the subtle level, it will have the physical equivalence as well, you know. So if you were to eat things which have a certain resonance, then that will have a link. So in this path then, to regenerate our body, we need to keep our focus on things that we would associate with life, with energy, with renewal. So you can actually find this in that there are books from sort of the 17th century London where they were doing this. They used to call this angel food or the angel stone, and it was a diet basically where they'd have flowers. You know, you can have your chrysanthemums and your nasturtiums and that kind of thing. You can have, you know, they'd eat flowers, they'd eat sprouted beans, they'd drink milk, and that's a big thing, incidentally, not just in this tradition. In India, there are whole rejuvenation retreats which are just drinking milk, and that's seen as a rejuvenating food. There are techniques which practitioners watching this may be aware of eating your food with full focus. This is part of Franz Bardon's teachings. You want to receive all the blessings from that food. Now, this is a basic version. There are higher equivalents. There's a technique in called the embryonic eating. So imagine the next level of conscious reception of food where you are specifically leading that charge to somewhere which could be of use for your training. It could be a particular point, or leading it to an organ which needs to be renewed. So how you eat makes a difference. Now, let's be absolutely clear when we talk about mental mastery. You and I, William, we're up against some great challenges. There have been decades, millennia of human evolution of cooking, yes, and it's been perfected. It's been perfected to be tempting to you and I. It's not just one person thinking, how can I tempt William into eating? It's generations of people. How do we make this extra crispy? How do we make this flavor? The food we've got now is not made to be the ideal diet. It's made to make us buy it. So we need every day to exercise a superior sense of self-control. And here's what I do. The question was, what do you do? And let's go to the specifics. Every year I do four-day fasts. So I don't eat anything at all. I just drink water for those 4 days. I've been trained in fasting by in Japanese Buddhism. That's where I learned it. and you tend to offer fasts to a purpose. So you set an intention. In this case, you could regenerate your body. 4 days is a uncomfortable fast for me. It's never, and it's never fun, but it's long enough that there is a regeneration. And during a fast, your body gets better at identifying injuries and repairs them. It renews your immune system. Your immune system does more than we think. You see, your immune system has got some involvement in identifying cells that need to be repaired and dealing with those. But also, as you get older, certain cells, they break down so bad. So one of the main causes of aging is some cells go faulty. And these senescent cells are like zombies. They sit in your body, and what's happened is they've got so broken that your body's a bit scared about reproducing them. So it just sits there giving out distress signals. And here's why they're called zombie cells. If there's too many of them, these distress signals are polluting enough, they damage the cells near them. So the older you get, the faster you age. I believe the 4-day fast is enough, and there are studies in animals and so animal models, and the epidemiology shows that countries where people fast, they live longer, they have a lower incidence of cancer. I believe it's enough to get rid of these senescent cells. During that fast, my body fat will drop and some of my muscle, and actually I always have a sharp drop. I mean, I'll go under sort of almost approaching 2 kilos sometimes. A lot of that's water. A lot of that's the blood glycogen. A lot of that's there's no food in your system. This is the best practice I've found for me. I've experimented with 1 day, 1 meal a day, with 2 meals a day. 1 meal a day, that's tough. I know you did that for a while. That's a tough one, that is.
Yeah, I actually did that for 110 days. I was actually surprised that I didn't lose more weight, to be honest. It's amazing how when you hit that, the middle age stage, it clings on.
Absolutely. So there's also some, how do I put this? There might be a mechanism to do with hormones that we at a certain age need to deal with. If you're a man and you have higher body fat, your testosterone doesn't circulate so much, and your testosterone lowers your body fat and builds muscle. So for me, these fasts have broken through plateaus and lowered my body fat. Now, let's talk about food. I only eat what most people would perceive as health food, but I've always been like that. Now, I'd love to say this is to do with superhuman discipline, but my focus, what I'm after all the time, is protein sources. When I was young, I ate sweets and things like that, but never with the great enthusiasm other people did. It was always after, protein. And likewise, I also got pancreatitis as a child. I got a lot of illnesses. Yeah. My sister, she'd responded badly to an immunization. So I wasn't immunized for anything. So I got all those illnesses instead. So, yeah. So I have a aversion to fat still. Not very strong, You and I could have a Chinese meal, I'll be okay. But I would never put butter on bread or voluntarily have butter, So there might be some things there. I tend to overeat if I let myself. So it's something I need to be mindful of. I always practice conscious reception of food without exception. And I've got skillful ways of doing that, even if I'm caught in a kind of situation, you know, it's a public meal and people are talking to me. Bardon, of course, said this was a way to work miracles within yourself. So that's kind of the kind of earth, what we take in. And there are some supplements you can take as well. The yoga practitioners used to always have 2 elixirs they took a day, one in the morning, one in the evening. And this is when we start to talk about the nature of inner alchemy. The idea is, and you'll see this amongst all the different traditions, there are different names for it, and sometimes they don't quite match, is there are 2 primary forces within the body. There's one energy of the actual body, and there's a higher energy, which is of the consciousness. And this energy, which is of the consciousness, is ageless. It's beyond aging, whereas this body here, this body energy can run out. In the early yoga texts, they had called these are 2 bindu, and these are called the biju, or seed, and rajas, or fieriness. And you can see these pictured on the first tarot card of Franz Bardon as the electric and magnetic points. And this is the exact description.
On screen now.
Okay, wonderful. So looking at these 2 figures that will be on the screen, there are certain elixirs to energize each one of these. They are traditional and they've been handed down in different traditions. And there's ones which, let's describe them as Rosicrucian, which are Western. And there are those which are from India, and these are more commonly known. And there are those which are from China, and there's an intriguing overlap. So, and they're very simple things. It's that, you know, these are genuine beneficial compounds, but it's how you do it, how you take those. Now, anyone who studies initiation hermetics knows how you take those. It's just the aim is slightly different. You're going to be consuming them to go to those points. A bit of fun as an aside, I mentioned milk. There are in India, they really like the Indian gooseberry, and they really like milk. And they used to make either have these separately, like I'm describing, or they'd combine them. And they've got these wonderful ancient alchemical works where most of yoga is based on the alchemical analogy. Most people modernly don't know this. The names they've got for the different bandhas and the mudras, they're all about pots, about alchemical furnaces, about the things you put between different distillation equipment. It's all the analogy is about what's in you. Anyway, these texts which go on for, you know, days. You can read the whole thing, and it's showing you how to extract this heavy metal and put it in here and infuse it with this and do that. And at the end of this whole text, you've made this kind of elixir life. It says, or you can use gooseberry and milk.
All right.
What?
Yeah.
What rather than this? That's how much they sort of believed in these things. Now, here's an important thing, William, real important thing to express. We started with a few things about the mind, about purity. Purity in terms of the body is rather important as well. The food industry is extremely dirty. Nobody's monitoring stuff, what's in things. They just, you know, there's some quality control on some stuff, but you know, you can, yes.
I just want to say I worked about a year in a Weatherspoon's kitchen, so better not going into too much. All I'm saying is just deep fry that steak. And, I learned how to make a tuna sandwich in 10 seconds with a spoon. So
word, wow, there's a skill base. But I'm also thinking in terms of contaminants and what's in there.
Oh yeah. Well,
nowadays we've got heavy metals. We've got a problem with microplastics, this kind of thing. So I try to keep a discipline of making sure things are not plastic packaged, are sourced as locally as possible. I'm very reductionist with food. You can't listen. You got to have a balance. You could stress out about it so much that you're better off just eating, junk food. So you've got to find a balance.
Sorry to interrupt. With a lot of healthy food, you just look at it and you know, right? I mean, it's kind of obvious. I mean, this is the way I tend to operate. If it's green, I mean, vegetables, it's all very intuitive. If you eat, pasta or potato, you become full and heavy. Vegetables, fruit, but not too much fruit, you're light. Obviously, you can drink as much tea as you like and it makes you feel alert. If you drink coffee, it tends to bring you off target in meditation. It's all very, very intuitive.
Yes, actually, now you mention it, there's some intriguing things. So tea has been proven to have the catechins in there, particularly green tea, have a great beneficial effect that may well stimulate some of the longevity genes. Olives, this is definitely worth having olives, the oleic acid. This is a lovely thing. I have olives every day. I have green tea every day. A glass of red wine, it may well be that there's some polyphenols and resveratrol being one of them in there that might help keep you younger. It might be that moderate alcohol consumption has got a positive health outcome, but I try to not get down that direction. And this is to do with my nature. I don't want to practice being drunk too much. I don't want to get pulled into that. There are other sort of things health-wise where there's some disagreements. So eating meat, in yoga, you're most certainly meant to be vegetarian, and I am largely vegetarian. However, I do not believe that eating meat will get in the way of your energetic practice or will aid you like some other people do. I see no evidence for this. In fact, it's a very nutritious sort of source of things. But carrying on with that meditation of what things would associate with life, you mentioned fruit. That's wonderful. The fruit is definitely full of life force. Eggs, nuts, beans, you can imagine these sprouts. These are the kind of things we should be focusing on if we want to regenerate the body because of the law of sympathy. Now, another thing I'd say a bit about this earth thing is this is about mastery. And people talk about mastery of the senses. If we think these things control us, it's nothing concerned to the things that we must face further on. So it is a very good thing to deal with this now. Now, you can, as I said, you can overdo it in different directions. And I tend to try to keep a balance. So I'm not one of these obsessive people. As I said, I tend to be vegetarian, but if someone made a mistake, if I was in China and got some lumps of meat in my stir fry, I'm not going to be feeling terrible about it or jumping around. Yeah. Top tip, if you are in China and you don't want bits of meat in your stir fry, tell them you're Buddhist. It increases the chances of you not getting that sort of by about 30%. Now, other physical practices. most evenings I will either have an ice bath or a sauna. And that's just what I'll use that temperature control as part of my training. But it's normally, I'm normally learning something or studying something at that kind of same time. That's in the bracket that many people would spend watching television or watching YouTube videos and that kind of thing. I like to sort of double that up. But while we're still on Earth, here's something I think is really, really important. Whenever I have a goal, I try to embrace life as my teacher on it. And I look around and I think a lot of the reason why people age is they stop embracing challenges. It gets humdrum for them. They stop lifting things if they're a bit heavy and ask for help or pay other people to do it. They stop challenging their body, but they stop challenging their mind. They use a sat nav for everything. They use a calculator when it is there. They stop learning new things. So one of the big disciplines I have is really doing it. And genuineness is a superpower. It really is. So just like in this conversation, really doing it is a real important part of this sort of foundational level. And let's apply that with diet. So summary of part one. What do I do? The two different elixirs, one in the morning, one in the evening, traditional ones, method of taking it, which sort of I hinted at before. Eating everything which has a regenerative imprint on it. That's with full focus. Calories. I keep myself calorie deficient, just a little bit, and I'll even that out at some point when I've run out of body fat. You know, slowly my body fat's slowly lowering. Fasting, 4 days, 4 times a year. Incidentally, the hardest thing about that is the days after the fast. Oh.
Well, I know with my exploits of 1 meal a day, I have experienced extreme bouts of depression. I actually stopped eating sugar as well. This was just like a self-challenge, you know, can I do it? And I got some sugar cubes so I could actually ration down the sugar and keep like a checklist. So I started off with 9 sugar cubes per day, gradually worked it down, you know, 2 or 3, until eventually it was like, right, no sugar. And I had about 10 days, no sugar. And just as a little anecdote, it's not vitally important, but I went to see the movie Dune 2 after about 10 days of no sugar, and it was almost a spiritual experience. This movie was amazing. Like, it was hitting me emotionally. I was so empty, so bedraggled. I'd gone through so much depression that when I experienced this stimulus, it was very awful. Yeah.
You went through the desert to get to June. Yeah. So the next, I'm going through all these basics. Next part is sleep.
Yeah.
So, and this is something I've been studying a lot, is the art of sleeping. Now, many people watching this video would have heard about lucid dreaming, you know, when you become aware and you go and do great things when you're asleep. That's a different art. I'm talking about an art of regeneration and hibernation in sleep. So you'll see this in many different traditions, that there's a sleep, and this sleep can be triggered by other exercises. Exercise we'll cover a bit later on will naturally bring around a supernatural sleep. Or you can learn how to do it. And there are texts on this, and there are teachers that can teach you. So this is hinted at in Franz Bardon. He talks about in step 2 about how you should do auto-suggestions before you go to sleep. But he also says, make sure you take the most beautiful and lovely blessings into bed. Well, how would you start this, watching this video? How would you take this home and say, be inspired by this? Well, yeah, there's some exercises here which are quite advanced, and they're really for someone who has genuinely gone through those first 3 books completely, right? So there's some exercise in there, and that involves these 2 fluids and the unity of them becoming one. And so that now we get to the important point. So this alchemical process is about joining these inner opposites, in Bardon terminology, electric and magnetic. And let's visualize what that would be like.
Let's get, this is always, when I first began with this, obviously I have an inner map now. Yeah. This is where I'm thinking of the viewing. This gets very confusing to people when we talk about all these different forces and plus and minus and sun and moon and that kind of thing. So you've already talked about an energy within the body that can lessen with age, an energy outside the body that is eternal. You've mentioned, I believe, sun and moon, or I might have filled that in with
no, absolutely, you've got it absolutely right. So
let's just bring a bit of clarity on all these.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, the process of alchemy is about joining, as you say, the sun and the moon. So it's about opposites. And different cultures have different terms for this. So this would be, the yin and yang, the yin yo, the inga in pingala, the electric and magnetic. And the idea is that these 2 opposites could join to make something more powerful than the sum of their parts. So I would invite you to consider this. Imagine what it would be like if the material aspect and your spiritual aspect became one. The masculine, the feminine, the night, the day, the conscious and subconscious. So visualize.
Interrupt this. Again. Could we draw a kind of cross here? This eternal, this bodily joining, and then obviously right hand, male, female joining in a kind of center.
Oh, I like that. Yes. So the way to kind of visualize some of this might be is that your body would take on more of the qualities of your spirit, and your spirit more of your body. Think how influential your thoughts would be if they were more solid, but think how renewed your body would be if it was more eternal. Think about the consciousness when you sleep, when you can see things. Imagine what that would be like if you almost had a dream-like vision of the hidden things during the day and an awareness of what was happening when you were asleep. This joining process is really what this inner alchemy is about. But on a more practical level, for most people watching this, this is quite advanced stuff. Your sleep is something you need to embrace because it's regenerative. And it is how your body naturally rejuvenates. So much so that they've found if you work nights, if you sleep less, you tend not to live as long, and you tend to be prone to illness earlier. Likewise, the occurrence of mental illness in young people who sleep less is a lot more. So it is generally healthy. And a lot of this might be that when you sleep, there's a draining and a detoxification of the brain. There's a lot that happens. So I would invite you to see your sleep as something sacred and beautiful, and to fully embrace that moment. Most people just lie in bed and hope. I suggest that as you lie in bed, you take a few moments to relax the whole body and imagine that rejuvenation. Set that intention that everything is going to be repaired, your eyesight's going to improve, your hearing is going to be better, your mind's going to work better when you wake up, your body is going to be more the direction it needs to be and healthy. Do a little scan. And likewise, fully engaged with that in the sense of relaxation. If you wake up during the night, use that. You are the master of your own mind. You calm yourself and just rest. Let that rejuvenation go. Seeing that this sleep in such a positive way may be a good thing. You might need to adjust a few things. We've had years of grind culture where people are saying you must work and learn to sleep faster, and this famous person only slept for 3 hours a day and did this. Okay, well, no, we're gonna embrace sleep as part of our evolution. And in our spiritual training, we sit in certain states of mind to become more like that, don't we? So if you're a yoga practitioner and you meditate on kindness, you do so that you achieve a oneness with kindness. If you're Christian and you're praying to cultivate a saint who's got a certain quality, you want a connection that's going to do that. If you're following a pagan religion and you're adopting the god form, you're not adopting the god form of a brave hero because you want to reject those qualities. You want to become like what you're contemplating.
Absolutely. A quote comes to mind here. If something like, to paraphrase, if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung.
Oh, I like it. I thought you were going to say Henry Cornelius Agrippa's that sits in salt becomes salted.
Yeah.
But yes, I think there's some truth here. This is, as you say, working with the unconscious or the subconscious or the deep mind. The truth is we become more like what we think about, and this is vibrational. And this is amazingly and surprisingly evolutionary. I have found, let's say you said to me, Martin, I want you to work on this. Say, Martin, I want you to be, let's make something up. Say, Martin, I want you to be more polite. If I lie in bed and I think about something before I go to sleep, I'll find that if I don't like that quality, even if I don't know I don't like that quality, I can't think about it. So let's imagine there's an inner resistance to politeness. I lie there, I'll do it for about 2 minutes, and then I'll start fantasizing about some brilliant project or something wonderful. Whereas if it is something I do want to do, if you say, Martin, I want you to, develop this great skill or something, I want you to learn archery, I could lie there thinking about that for ages. So the beginning stage is just getting yourself to be able to think about what you're trying to cultivate in yourself before you go to sleep. And you'll be surprised, your mind will do funny things to try to get around it. And it might do some strange things whereby you imagine it in an exaggerated form. It might be I need to work through some things. It may be the only time I come back to you and say the only way I can imagine myself being polite before I go to sleep is to imagine myself being famous and being interviewed, being polite. So, oh, hang on, Martin. Well, there may be something in that. Let your brain do that if that's what it wants to do. But you might be able to get past that self-aggrandiment and be able to imagine yourself being polite to, a homeless person when no one's looking next. You might be able to get there. With this, you're regenerating yourself. You might find that if you lie there and you imagine that while you sleep, everything is going to renew. Your organs will work better. Your body will become regenerated. You will become younger and fitter and healthier. You might find some funny things get in the way, or you start imagining it in a silly, exaggerated way. You might need to work through that. But setting that intention when you go to sleep and renewing it. Bardon uses auto-suggestions. These are a very powerful way to do this. So auto-suggest before you go to sleep, or suggest if you wake up, or just imagine it really strongly. This allows you to have meditation style benefits to your personality, to yourself during your sleep. And this is a powerful thing, and because of it, there's often a bit of resistance in people. Likewise, sleep hygiene, making sure you've got a nice place where you can actually sleep, making sure you overcome resistance to sleep. Have you ever had that thing when it comes to bedtime and you're really tired, but there's part of you says no?
Yes, many times.
So what does the bit in you that says no, we're not sleeping now, even though we're tired? What is it?
It says this goal that you're working on, this thing that you're heading towards, you haven't done enough today. Perhaps you should, carry on, read another chapter of that book on Egypt and work a little bit more on that writing you're doing. Don't worry if it's midnight, you'll be okay. 1 o'clock, that'll be fine. And then 1 o'clock will come and it will still be, maybe I'll just have another cup of tea. It's hard.
Yeah, so that one, I've seen it sort of in other people a lot stronger than I get it. In my early 20s, I discovered that I can either sleep a lot more and have great mood and approach to things. If I slept less, I was a different person. Now, here's an intriguing thing with this training. Your sleep might go up initially.
I have found that the more meditation that I do of an evening, I don't always hit my goal of 2 hours, but I will not forgive myself if I don't at least complete 1 hour. On the frequent days where I do hit 2 hours, it's like I can just have 6 hours sleep and I'm good. Does that tally with you, or is your experience?
Yeah, so I'm talking specifically in terms of regeneration.
Oh, okay.
So yes, if you are on a regenerative path, you may find that your sleep, if you trigger it, if you trigger the process, goes up to a higher degree. And there are arts, if you specialize, if you learn them, you probably heard stories of great masters that just go to sleep for months on a time. They can be buried alive and do this. These hibernation skills are real. They're actually real. And you can learn how to sort of, it's still in there. So these are skills, but initially someone who's undertaking a path of regeneration may well find their sleep goes up enough that actually, some people think, is this person ill? Why are they sleeping so much? Your body needs time to do that. And it's a very deep process with a lot of, you're going to need a lot of oxygen, you need a lot of rest. Yes, so back to your point, meditation often decreases the amount of time people need to sleep. In Zen and Chan monasteries, they also say it helps you keep warm. So this isn't Tumo. They say that if they don't do their couple of hours meditation, they find they're colder at night. So that might be something you can comment on, because I know that you've got great potential for being cold at night.
Yeah, well, obviously most people who watch the channel will know that I've lived in a van for about 4 years, the term that I've been, your student. Obviously, it's presented many challenges, and I will say, and I really mean this as well, meditation is my savior. It will cure depression in roughly 1 hour. I will go to sleep I'm going to swear now, in the freezing cold, with a beautiful tranquility just behind my nose in the breath, with a sense of, this is my test. I'm going to win this. If I was to avoid that meditation, I'd be cold. I'd be thinking about, issues with people and, this bill and that. It is an absolute miracle.
Damn.
When kept up,
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about that cold then. So most people experience being cold now and again, and they might have a couple of hours getting cold. Some people watching this video, and it'd be interesting for them to comment, may have experienced what you're talking about, which is prolonged cold. And there's a certain psychological effect of prolonged cold. I can actually remember, this will make you laugh, I remember starting to get angry at the cold. So I spent some time.
I get angry with the damp. When it's damp, when I'm breathing damp air, and there's no escape from damp air for about, obviously we're heading towards the autumn now. This is going to happen again. Breathing in damp air for days on end, it makes me angry, and it gives me a headache as well. I will say breathing in cold air for a prolonged period. This is why I make use of the scarf quite often to put it over my nose in meditation. It sort of warms up that space. Headaches and anger. Yeah. But carry on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So back to our regenerative sleep. Some people, they use their watch or Fitbit, and they monitor their sleep score and things like that. So remember I said at the beginning, I embrace life as my teacher. So if something stupid happens and I can't sleep, there's an emergency, I'm needed, I get trapped somewhere after an event and the train doesn't turn up, I just take that as good training. I actually think a little bit of stimulus in the other direction, it's a bit like our fasting. I think now and again it's good for you to be kept up all night now and again, just to make you learn to train through that, to do this. And I also think that for me, sleep is something, if I start monitoring it, I think I might get a bit sort of over focused. I want to just go there and enjoy that relaxation without having a sleep score in the morning and saying, oh, I must have woken up twice in there and I didn't get enough REM sleep. So that's not my approach to it. I have been studying a lot of the different sleep arts for regeneration, and you might be surprised to hear in some traditions there are sleep techniques for different illnesses. You sleep like this, you should breathe like this before you go to sleep, you should say this to you. There's different positions. It's been fascinating to learn. But now we come to sort of the next kind of element in this for me, which should be.
I'll just stop you there a moment, Martin. We'll take a 5-minute break so you can collect your thoughts. And which element are we coming back to next?
We're going to come back to air in a moment.
Oh, air. Wonderful. Okay.
Yes, we're just finishing water and we'll do air.
Yep, in just a few seconds. Okay. Okay. Let there be light. And on the subject of the air element as it relates to the rejuvenation training, take it away, Martin.
Yes. So we've covered the earth element in the sense of what we take in terms of food, and the water as in the control of our consciousness and our sleep and recuperation. Now let's talk about our air element, both in terms of our mind and our breath. In traditional physical alchemy, remedies used to be made of mercury. Now, mercury itself isn't a very good thing to put inside your body. It's kind of got inherent sort of toxic qualities. So in both Indian and in the Western tradition, they do things to the mercury to make it be safe and beneficial. And you can actually look these up online. People have actually taken these traditional remedies and they've sort of gone through this, and there's actually some studies where it showed they did actually have a trick of kind of making it safe. Okay, but I think it's a very advanced practice. Now, why am I mentioning this? Well, this is an analogy. I mentioned at the beginning there were some things with our mind that we needed to sort out. Well, a lot of this consciousness, this needs to be made beneficial. There needs to be a real positive attitude towards what you're doing and a really good sense of positive endeavor, a firm conviction and a faith. This can be trained very much by watching your words and correcting your thoughts. If you find yourself thinking something and it's not really the direction that would be useful for this or for anything, get in the habit of just correcting them into the right place. A bit like you were talking about with your meditation, you know, to overcome some of these hardships. Breathing is one of your most powerful tools in this, and the practice of pranayama in yoga and again in Taoist yoga is really powerful. So prana is this ki, this chi, this pneuma, vital force, and the control of it. Now, I myself practice a particular form of pranayama called Bhastrika pranayama with kumbhaka. So this would be, to translate this into layman's terms, it's a form of breathing which involves hyperventilation. So you breathe very quickly. And then when you've reached that pinnacle, you will exhale all the air, and you'll do so emptying your lungs. So this is not normally sort of in a chair, but I'll demonstrate the best I can. Now you can find links to me doing this in my. You can put the link to me doing this on my website, so on my YouTube channel. This is an advanced form of yogic breath work, and there's lots that should lead up to this. There's various techniques to purify the system. Now, this is working on that inner joining I was talking about, and there's some particular inner exercises that you need to learn from a teacher. But on the outer level, it is my firm belief that this up and down of the oxygen is having the same effect as the hyperbaric oxygen chamber I mentioned that the people are using. Now, people might say, hang on, the oxygen chamber puts your oxygen up, doesn't take it down. Studies have shown that what's happening is that the oxygen going very high, and then they move up and down in that high state. It's confusing the cells. The cells think, oh, I'm about to be suffocated. And what they do is it releases, your body releases stem cells, and it also repairs your telomeres, the ends of your chromosomes. And there's some small indicative studies into this. I've actually found videos of yoga practitioners where they're recording their oxygen levels, and they do indeed take it higher than the hyperbaric chamber and lower than the hyperbaric chamber. So I think it probably is having that effect as a side effect. But here's the important thing. We're back to as above, so below. There's a funny thing, William, and it's just something I've found completely across the board. Whatever the inner exercise is, there'll be an outer effect of this. So this inner exercise is leading to, there are different levels of this kind of union in yoga, and there's a combining of the breaths, as it were, within the body. This inner rejuvenation is reflected in the physical rejuvenation. Now, if you're watching this, you're saying, well, this is advanced yoga, and it is advanced yoga, and you really shouldn't even try the physical exercise without leading up to it, really. You can really strain yourself with some of these breathing techniques. But if you are interested in this kind of practice, do go to a yoga class, there's actually many people that can teach this, and they'll lead up progressively. They'll teach you ujjayi, pranayam, they'll teach you nadi shodhana, they'll give you exercise towards this. From our own practical point of view, the quality of our air, it's a bit like the quality of our words and the quality of our thoughts. It is an important thing to think about. People who live next to roads, they have a lower life expectancy than those that live in the country. People who live next to industrial areas, they have a lower life expectancy. And it is something, depending on where you live, you might want to have a look at. Certainly if you're living in some of the industrialized Oriental countries, where they have a little alarm goes off and tells you when you need to go inside. This is an important thing. The difference in your breathing in day-to-day life is also something very much worth noting. Here's a kind of a tip with it. Watch the breath you have when you are in your best mind. I'm not going to, I can tell you what I think it would be like. I'm concerned that it would lead the witness. But next time you're in an absolute state of calm self-control, look at your breath. And you may find it has a particular quality to it. Remember that. Remember that and make that your normal breath. Likewise, do you ever do this thing, I don't know whether this works very well if you're living in a van, where you wake up in the morning and it's before the alarm or before you need to do anything, and you lie there and you snooze, and it's like a feeling of bliss? Do you ever have that?
Absolutely, and I enjoy actually when the alarm goes off, just going back in for another 10 minutes because I'm going to catch a hint of something. There's going to be something important. Sometimes I can perhaps bring it back on that liminal space.
Well, have a look at that breathing. I believe that state has got a regenerative quality to it. And if you can catch the state of mind and catch how your breath is working, and then learn to do that, there you go. This ties into our previous conversation. This can be very powerful. Now, your question was about my routine. So I practice this breathing. You can see this is something I've sort of got on my website, and I alternate this with some of the techniques we'll be talking about later on. And I do so for prolonged periods. It takes great discipline to do this. But I believe this is a very significant factor in the regeneration that I've seen. So we talk about these genetic tests, and I don't know how interested the people watching this will be in this, but I've managed to at least remain competitive with these people who are younger than me, or have got a huge amount of funding, or who are professional rejuvenation athletes. I think at one point I was number 12 in the rejuvenation Olympics, and then there's a huge amount of in those days you could sort by country, but the sort by country option has jammed, because since then there've been huge publicity, and an innumerable number of people have entered. I mean, across the world, there's hundreds of people taking part every day. So I've been knocked down. I'm somewhere I'm in number 21 at the moment at time of making this video, but 21 in the world.
How many people are there doing this?
Sorry?
Does it tell you how many people are actually in this group?
It used to. It used to list. I know that at one point it listed over 60,000 people.
All right. That's, well, being 21 out of that amount.
Yes. Well,
that puts it in context.
Yes. Likewise, there were some significant changes to my epigenetic age. I always forget the exact figures. So there you go. I'm looking at my own website to look at the exact figures, because I don't want to get it wrong and people think, hey, Martin was exaggerating. But there's an epigenetic test which shows the state of repair of your cells, and it can predict more or less sort of the age of someone. As I said, I think it's accurate enough that people that it's used to try to identify if there's sort of blood at the scene of a crime or whatever. Let's have a look. So yes, so here are my results. I managed to slow my speed of aging. So most people age 1 year for 1 year. I'm currently aging at 0.77 years for 1 year. So I get a few months sort of free. But also my epigenetic age, it was initially, when they tested me, it was 44. And I managed to get it down to 29.
Perhaps we should say you're 47 years old, and we are the same age, actually. Two people here, 47.
47 this year, this December, yeah. So absolutely. So yeah, 29. I want to keep it. Sorry.
You're 46 at the moment, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, and your epigenetic age is reading as?
Well, the best test, I think it came out as something like 33 last time, but it was the best I ever got was 29. I really tried to keep it there. I really tried to keep it there. But this is a big change here. And a lot of that is to do with this breathing technique. Now, as I said, there's an inner version of this. Now, to be able to actually fully undertake this training, you really need to have done step 8 or more. You're in Bardon. So think of it a bit like the other books. This would be another one. But I do believe that learning pranayama and also the learning to do the vital force breathing will have an effect in and of itself. Indeed, you probably, it's worth mentioning here that almost all the exercises in Initiate Hermetics appear somewhere in a different tradition as a regeneration exercise. So that's a very important thing. The breathing into the body, the breathing into the organs, the use of the elements on the body. These are all seen as secret regeneration exercises. So that what we're doing is in this direction anyway. So that's a very important thing. And then let's come to fire. Exercise. We all know that physical exercise makes a difference. That's one of the best things you could do to do with fire is a sauna. There's some figures on saunas that show a decrease, a 40% decrease in all-cause mortality. So any cause of death for those who have sort of 3 saunas a week. It's a lot of saunas. And that's probably because there's a few things happening. There's a theory that when your body gets hot, it releases a repair protein, a heat stress protein, but it repairs a bit better than you'd expect. It's a bit like if you start cleaning up your room and you get addicted and end up doing the rest of the room, the rest of the house. It may also be that sauna imitates exercise because your heart races and opens up the blood vessels. Cold exposure. I practice a form of physical exercise called I Ching in Indian dand baskets. Think of it as spiritual weightlifting or spiritual calisthenics. I've written a lovely book on it. You can have a look at Secrets of Rejuvenation. But I practice with weights. I practice every 3 days. I'll lift and I work to my limit. So this is working using the breath and the mind to control the muscles and to use the inner force directly in that muscle. And it's always in terms of blessing that body part. There's a belief that each muscle is connected with a different organ. So this is a very important part of my practice. And now we come to some of the direct exercise involving this inner alchemy, and there's lots of them. So if you were to get some of the early yoga texts, you will read the routines available, and some of them are very subtle meditations. Some of them are close to what we'd see as asana. They're stretches that involve directing the energy in certain ways. I'm testing deliberately a very direct, very physical one, which is called Vipari Karini Mudra. In English, this would be inverted attitude posture. So there's 2 levels to this. There is a inner exercise and breathing, and you are doing what's a bit like a shoulder stand. You can look on my website, you can see the exact thing at the same time. Now, this is universally seen as a form of regenerative exercise within early yoga texts. Across the board. In fact, the early yoga texts believe that if you do this, you can recharge the batteries. So there's a technique of recharging the batteries while you're upside down. Instead of running down the system, you're turning back the clock. There's even a belief that if you do it properly, you will permanently change your body so it doesn't age. And that appears quite a lot. There's only one problem. It's a big one. The instructions say, do it for 2 hours every day.
On top of everything else.
Yeah, on top of having a life, yes. Now, some people say, oh my word, this can't be literal. Well, actually, in India right now, there are people that their discipline is they hold one hand in the air. And that's it. They hold it for the whole of their life.
So is there anything actually in that? Because that's like a bit of a joke out there, you know, the guy holding his arm up till he can't move it anymore. So there's actually something to that?
Yes, so there's a concept in India or in yoga of austerities, and austerities having certain abilities and powers associated with them, overcoming hardships. And some of them, a bit like the hand, and there's other ones we don't do, see so much. They used to have a practice where in the winter they'd sit in cold water, and in the summer they'd sit in the heat and put fires around themselves and so on. Often these have got an inner association with them. So let's imagine, like with that hot and cold, that it's a bit like taking the 2 elixirs, one in the morning, one in the evening. And we could talk a little bit about that hand later on, but they believe there are 2 channels in the body, and one's going up, one's going down, and it could be possible to change that flow with something as dramatic as having your hand up in the air in order to lead to a combining. So they all have a purpose in there, even if it sort of seems a bit strange to us, from a different culture. So this Vipari Karini Mudra, I wanted to experiment with it because, first of all, I'm a very physical person. So it gives me, and it also is an intriguing outer expression of it, inner contemplation. So when you start these exercises, you think, okay, well, no, this is, you've learned, your teacher has shown you how to do the breathing, how to do the imagining, and what the process is. And then you've got the physical part. You don't realize the kind of other aspects to it. So what if you were to invert your attitude to the world? Okay, so what would that be like? Well, most people, let's look at what most people are trying to do. They're trying to do the best for them compared to those who are around them. Wow, what if you changed that? What if you were trying to do the best for who's around you? Oh, okay. What about most people are trying to appear impressive? What if you were to reverse that? So some of this reversed attitude where you start to let go of the things people normally hold on to and hold on to things people normally let go of is a big thing. And for me, this has been very much a path of what they would call vairagya, not to be mixed up with a similar word. This means colorlessness. So in order to be able to dedicate myself to this kind of ascetic practice, and it is just day in, day out, 2 hours, 2 hours, 20 minutes about actually, of inversion and breathing exercise and postures and meditations. You work up to this. I've had to find a different place within myself. So first of all, you need to let go of all agitation, because there's a part of you every morning that thinks, no, not today, not today. But also I've realized that my mind has a big influence. So I've had to start to make sure, and it's been an honor to do so, that I'm letting go of selfish or hateful motives, feelings. I had to purify myself, and it's an ongoing thing, but an unexpected element of this. And that's perhaps some of this inverted attitude that comes with this. And I believe it has been this posture practice that caused that initial regeneration to that degree. Now, I told you there's an as above and so below. I believe someone who hasn't got those inner keys won't have the same effect, but I think they would have an effect. There are some therapies, some scientifically based therapies now, where they use certain vitamins and certain medicines, some of which have been used in chemotherapy and things like and hormones and stuff, to bring around an effect on the thymus. And this is, your immune system decreases as you get older. And I believe that something about this practice, and so I'm trying to find this regeneration of the thymus for you. This regeneration in the immune system may well be also part of the blessings that come with prolonged inversions in yoga. There may also be another aspect. Remember I said I had to let go of all sorts of agitation and find the inner tranquility. I think this may be a yogic secret as well. Basically, there's many exercises, but there's very few where you have to reach a state of perfect tranquility to be able to do this. And yeah, this is an important thing. Yes, so just to I'm talking from a position of education here, not from vague memory. yes, there have been some therapies where they've managed to show significant epigenetic age reversal, not quite the scale of the initial one I was talking about, but sort of things like a few years through treatments that regrow and regenerate this thymus, and this is something they're sort of looking into, a way to reverse biological aging. I think that's probably something going on here with that posture, but it's an as above, so below thing. Now, here's a really important thing. This inner process can take place in many different ways. I'm a very physical person and very ambitious and like quests. This can be done through, Bardon would have his own approach. This can be done through the art of memory. This can be done through meditations. The hatha yoga approach, the forceful yoga approach, is the way I've chosen, partly because it's my nature. I love this kind of thing, but also because I want to be able to demonstrate that this can be things that people can use themselves to help their regeneration. And I suppose that brings us to our Akasha.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes. So we've done our exercise. What about the actual energetics of this? Well, we've talked about the combining of these two forces, and I think this is actually the ongoing process of spiritual evolution anyway. It's just whether or not it manifests in such a overt way. The balancing of the elements, the joining of those opposites, into a whole. This is all part of our path from step one, from book one, as we go along. And if you do work through, if you look at that first card and you work through, I think the method of doing this will be quite clear to anyone who's actually done the practice. And may I say, I think this is an art that has been known in many different cultures from time immemorial. Which actually, this might lead you to your next question here. Actually, I've realised I may have actually.
Oh, let me just remind myself of the next question. But there'll be people watching this. They might have just stumbled upon this world, and they'll be thinking, surely all this is metaphorical, but these forces are real. These are experiential, not only psychologically, but experientially in terms of energetics and influence outside of strictly one's own psyche. Could you comment on that at all?
Yes, so I believe that we are modernly far more prone to give psychological interpretations of things. They seem far more believable to us. And I believe that with many of these practices, it's hard for people to visualize the power and potential behind them. Often, they can visualize the opposite. If you said to someone, do you think somebody with very, very negative state of mind could lead to sort of terrible outcomes? They may even believe that could influence things around them just by cause and effect, like we're in a sort of a whole sort of bubble, and everything is one then. But when you do the opposite, a lot of people find that hard to kind of visualize. I'd invite them to take this sort of contemplation, and we could probably imagine someone who their sort of mind state is so bad that they're very, very tense, and this could damage their back. And you could imagine that would lead to sort of and need painkillers, and that could lead to confusion and a bad state of mind. You can see the sort of knock-on of negative effects. You might even believe that person, if they're really in a troubled state, could beam it out and that people would naturally be adverse to them. All I'm inviting you to step is one step further, is to say that things aren't as separate as they seem. So that the effect, goodness has a good effect and negativity has a negative effect far beyond our initial comprehension. And yes, and these are literal things. They're not sort of a communication through suggestion or belief. There's a little bit more to that. The world's just a lot more joined than it appears from outside. And indeed, some of that separation is because it makes it easy for us to think about things. You know, it's a convenient way to think things in their own little compartments.
Of course, this sort of archetypal, you know, the scientific paradigm that has its way of producing skepticism. Of course, the other thing is you won't know unless you try it. It's like you highlighted the full tarot card, this 0 point before you progress on to the first tarot card. And that involves crossing a chasm. It's a bridge. It's a leap of faith, which is actually a really sensible definition of faith, as opposed to just believing in things that don't exist because it makes you feel better. You need to take a leap of faith into this world. You need to instigate these practices diligently over a long period of time. Obviously, that begs the question, you know, what would drum up that force within a human being to actually do that? Perhaps, you know, a little bit of divine providence or whatever, but if you're lucky enough to interact with people that have come, you know, a little way in this world, you will experience some extraordinary things if you are, you know, if you have a positive attitude. You know, you're willing to listen and learn. You know, things will happen. As well, I'll just get a few things out. We'll get on to the next question. Of course, this will raise in people's minds the question of this kind of, oh, you know, are meditation and the occult arts, are they separate? Because some people say, oh, it's separate, you know, this stuff, this ritualistic stuff. It doesn't really have anything to do with, you know, the spiritual practice of meditation. I mean, I know that they are linked, and I don't mean to sound arrogant at all, but like, Gnostically, if you like, if you step back from these two separate systems, they are sort of perennially linked. There is a force system behind these separations. So I just want to make those points to invite people to contemplate
think
those.
about that, yes. So one thing is moving on from this side, you're talking about the scientific process and so on. Let's imagine we're just going to talk about this in terms of what we currently scientifically understand. So we all know the placebo effect is extremely powerful. We know our DNA, that's you could almost put the DNA in that's the permanent thing, you know, it's got the whole program for the whole of your body. And outside that, the epigenome, that's the bit that sort of says what the cell should be doing. The question that someone watching this who, as you say, hasn't quite observed enough that they would feel that any of these deep sort of energetics are true, is, do you believe that somebody who is an expert in the control of their own mind might be able to find a place within themselves if they went into a fully focused deep state where they could command their cells to repair? Now we know that repair can be improved just by belief. Now I'm saying to you, could a greatly practiced, dedicated person find a state whereby they could do that? They could make that happen. We already know the mind can have an effect. That's what the placebo effect is. All I'm saying is this can be amplified. So that's all we're saying, and the rest of it, yes, you could. They will need to find their own evidence. Some things are very hard for us to see. They're very subtle, and especially if things are of the mind, we tend to get in our own way seeing them. So there's some important things there.
Okay, Martin. Right, we'll move on to the next question then, which is a bit of a challenge. This one. It's why the obsession for growing younger, considering the inevitability and key importance of death, acceptance upon the spiritual path. Does it fly in the face of this? Come on, we're going to die. Let's just,
Yeah, let's have a stoic attitude and so on. So I think there's a few things. I think, first of all, a lot of the decision making that humans are making at the moment is based on short term. So I think that if we can start to live longer, there'll be more accountability. You don't chop down all the trees if you're the person that has to put up with the problems afterwards, you know. So a lot of people just think, well, I won't see that. Let's just, you know, so they make money making decisions or convenience decisions now. So I think that living longer would be a positive thing for our race. I think likewise, there's some subtle possibilities, some strange things about us that we have got more natural potential. So brace yourself for this. Yeah, you should produce this as a short for your channel here. I've been wondering about this. There are some experiments in Japan where they're doing a treatment where you can regrow a new set of teeth. That may sound unbelievable, but you've already done it once. And it turns out that most of us have the potential for another 2 or 3 in there. What? Our brains, someone wants to do a calculation and say, well, we can do about 7 lifetimes. So we've got more teeth than we use. We've got a longer storage system. I'm starting to wonder, you know, there's all these stories and ancient Indian text and in the Bible and everything where everyone's living to 500 and stuff. I'm thinking, well, it's a bit strange, those extra teeth. It's a bit strange, that sort of extra storage. I wonder if we have got more potential than we're currently using, and something, you know, so maybe it's an evolutionary thing. I don't know. I'm intrigued. You see, animals, the reason why we age, incidentally, why we evolved to age, why don't we just have immortal bodies like those lobsters, is there's a genetic investment in making a robust body. So if you're a mouse and you're going to be eaten probably within a few months, you know, you don't want to invest in an immortal body that would and everything. It's evolutionary. There's too much goes into making you for you to be eaten. So animals on the higher level of the food chain, you know, tend to live longer. It's worth it more. So I think there's some positive reasons to do that, and I think that we might guide things a bit better. There also appears to be a tendency for humans who are happy not to breed. And you've probably seen that in Europe, our rate of birth is going down significantly. And so we may need people to be healthier and fitter longer if we're going to keep functioning. Talking about keeping functioning, this doesn't seem to be charging. Oh, right. Yes, recharging the battery, like we were talking about earlier. So yes, I think that's a positive thing. I also think that for this path, you may have a calling one way or the other, but a great work which is reflected by your inner work. And that great work could be some of this, could be visiting higher places, or could be making something special, or could be a project. This is a powerful thing. But it seems to me like, just like, you know, I said originally there was a kind of a higher thing was spirituality, but they've kind of all come together more for me now, where here this is as spiritual as in here, or high ideals and virtuous actions here are kind of on the same wavelength. So for me, it's an as above, so below thing. And I think it's important for someone to step forwards using the mind rather than using scientific interventions. It's time to show some inner potential. So that's why the focus, from my point of view. And of course, we kind of covered that sort of.
Yeah, it does to mind the notion of the true will as well. You know, this embodiment, this sense of mission. A lot of people struggle with, what exactly am I supposed to do here?
Yes. So for me, these higher missions, it used to be I didn't know that I was being called to them. I thought I was making the decision. So this is going to sound really crazy. I come up with my own reason why I was doing it, and the personality we call Martin would calculate why, and I spent years doing it only to see it was guided all along. And all my thoughts about it were just that.
No, of course, we mentioned true will, that perhaps might relate to the notion of the HGA as well.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm still waiting for an opportunity to be able to do something by my own decision now. I find that as soon as I finish something, there's no chance to rest. There's a next thing I should be doing. With the trying to find what are you here for? Here's what I found, which is quite an interesting thing. It'd be lovely to hear your opinion on it. If you water a seed, you get to see what it grows into. And I honestly believe this is the same with people. Now, the problem is that a lot of the time we do the opposite. We say, right, you're growing like this. And there's no water, there's no good soil, there's no sunlight, there's nothing to germinate. So if we start to help that person do what they will to do, so teach them your meditation twice a day, doesn't need to be anything too fancy to begin with, watch the breath and learn to control your mind, then teach them to start evolving in everything they do. Now, this is a bit of a hard thing to communicate because this just does not exist. Most people have never seen this happen in life. If you look at most people, there's very, very little daily learning or improvement. Granddad still chops the vegetables the way he did when you first met him when you were a toddler. The man in the post office still can't find where he put his calculator and still doesn't know how to fill in that form. This is a peculiarity if you think about it, because if you practice anything every day, you get better at it than these people are doing it all day. So if the person takes that meditation focus and in their life, when they chop the vegetables, they chop them as well they can. When they're at work, they really do that work with full heart and engagement. Their talents will start to shine. So we've kind of got the right water, the meditation, the right soil, the achieving things in everyday life. Then maybe the sunlight is a bit about learning to be able to dream most people end up just doing whatever job is near them that stops them being hurt by other people or going into debt. The system's sort of made up to get you into work. Very few people say, well, that's it. I'm flying to Hawaii. I'm going to teach jet ski. But I was brought up in, Bungay in Suffolk. Most people do what's near them. So inspiration, I think, would be the nice inspiration. I think if you get those three together, then you'll find out who you really are and what your true will is.
Well, I would say on that, it has surprised me, considering, certain limitations in place. And these limitations, they're kind of important in a way. Being a musician in the past, if I just had an 8-track recorder, I got my guitar, I got a certain drum machine, it's only got a few sounds on it, I don't have masses of choice, I would produce more material and be more happy with it. I would be in motion. But I found it's amazing that this sounds like a given, really, considering everything we've been talking about. But when you start to get an inclination of even what you believe you're here to do, or perhaps what you've even chosen, in conjunction with the practice, of course, it's amazing what turns up. I mean, if I think of myself sitting around just a couple of years ago, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a YouTube channel? Of course, in terms of the circle that I run as well, these began as dreams. But what gives them the power is this sense of, I would say, principle. You mentioned children earlier. I really want my children to respect me in the same way that a child looks up to an adult for guidance. A parent will look down at the children and want to do good by them. So that's been a really powerful, factor in my life. So even if you could square that the other way around, so you're only doing good things because you want to do well by your kids. It's like, well, that's a good start. And then you might find that you enjoy the positive interactions that you have with people as a side effect of, or the side effect is helping them, if you like. But yeah, I'll move on to the next question because I'm really excited to hear the answer to this one. Because there's this video that's been hanging around and it doesn't really get talked about a lot, and I think it's really important. So, what is so important about what you call your most important video, the method of Hermetic meditation revealed?
Ah, how wonderful! So, I think this is I need to start this all by saying that I'm a genuine practitioner. So my focus is on technique. And what I'm interested in is effectiveness of practice. So when I look at ancient texts or spiritual works, in this case, Hermetic ones, please be aware I'm seeing them through the eyes of a practitioner. And I firmly believe they were written by practitioners like me. Now, there may be historians who they look at some of the statements sort of and say, hey Martin, if you look at that, this section comes from here and the translation's like this and it's like that and everything. And just be aware that I'm really, really open to education. So that's the important thing. Now I've got that out of the way. To me, these Hermetic volumes involve instructions, and I think they're really important. Modernly, we tend to be very, very inspired by other traditions from India and China. We've seen a lot of that today, and there's a different feel to them and a different approach. And I think we neglect our own native spirituality. There's a tendency actually in us to idolize other cultures and diminish our own. And I think as a great beauty in some of the texts from the Ptolemaic period, and I think actually from the Roman occupied Egypt. And I think there are real hidden gems in there. And I hope, this is the thing. So here's a mission for you. It's beyond the scope of this video, and maybe we should have a talk about this at some other point. Have a look get your Corpus Hermeticum, get your Hermetic texts, watch that video, have a look at some of the other practices that were available at the time, and I think you might agree this is probably the original Hermetic approach. And I think it's a very powerful approach. And I hope it'll be a seed. I hope that people in the future will run with this. And indeed, since that video, I'm not saying this video caused it, there have been some texts which are really about the shamanic aspects hidden in the Hermetic texts, and the consciousness changing techniques which are in the Hermetic works. And I think this is a very important line of discovery. You see, it's part of knowing ourselves. Let's be clear, the word meditation comes from the Latin meditatio. The concept of enlightenment, light within you, is a Western concept. It's just the idea of this sort of enlightenment was the closest we had to describe this sort of bodhicitta, this higher thinking or enlightened thinking from other cultures. So we kind of used our words for it. I think it's important that we keep hold and know ourselves. And I think there's a lot of value in these, in philosophy. So I think we should study Stoicism, and then we should study Neoplatonic writings. I think they're absolutely superb meditation manuals, and yeah, we should study classics. I think there's a lot about correcting the mind, and that goes into details in other areas than you won't get so much in different traditions. So I think I hope this video will be a seed that grows, and hopefully, it has been part of that seed. And may I say, even if part of its germination is people saying, Martin, your interpretation isn't quite right, here's the real one. That would be a good outcome as well.
It is, when you embark upon this, journey of Hermetics, there is this notion of like, we keep focusing on the East, and that's wonderful, India and, Buddhism and, various practices, Japan, whatever. And we use a lot of that terminology, and that gets bound up in the New Age. And then when you look at these Hermetic texts, it's like they are describing meditation. And I'm glad you mentioned Egypt, because I am not going to go through a whole video without talking about Egypt, because this is the Broderick Wallace channel. So we have to sate that obsession for a little bit. So hopefully we'll get through this question before we take another break and talk about how much time we've got left. So the question is, there are those that argue the ancient Egyptians did not practice a meditation as we understand it today. What is your opinion on this matter, especially considering posture statues are open-eyed?
Yes, so let's talk about meditation and approaches to meditation and so on. And we're talking about specifically ancient Egypt. I've got sort of Egyptologist friends, and I tend to ask them uncomfortable questions. And I tend to infuriate them by seeing things in Egyptian practice that they think, well, I can't quite get where you're viewing this from, Martin. But again, I'm a practitioner's eyes. I think if we look at the Greek magical papyri, we can see that within Egypt, there was most certainly a concept that you could achieve, or at least a practice of achieving oneness with things, enough to gain a kind of influence. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So if all things are made of consciousness, and some of the Egyptian creation myths, you know, Atum dreaming the whole of existence, certainly show an idea that they viewed all things as consciousness, then focusing on something until you become it is kind of what we would see meditation to be. Here's a funny question I once asked. You know, I was talking to lots of Egyptologists, all wonderful experts, and I was saying, well, the Egyptians, they'd mastered the ability to go to the other realms. I said, well, there's no evidence of that.
No evidence.
I said, well, okay, well, how then did they draw maps of the other realms then? They got these detailed maps. They said this happens and that happens. This looks like this, and there's these happening like this and doing like that. How did they think this had been discovered? Did they believe that you could talk to people after they'd passed away? Well, there's no evidence of that. Okay, so but we need now we're getting to an interesting place. There's evidence of use of places called arbatons, which are dark rooms for contemplation. I'm aware of that. And again, you read some of the spells and the Greek magical papyri, and you'll see things like repeating. They've got mantra use. They've got breathing techniques. Noise, you know, when you make certain noise when you breathe out, when you breathe the sunshine into your body, where you summon things. I think some of this may be a terminology problem. And I think, how do I put this? In a society where it's just there, I think that sometimes maybe there isn't so much specialist terminology. It's really hard to get behind Egyptian things, you know, so they're so distant in the past. There's so different culture to try to visualize them.
Not to mention the intermediate periods and all of that damage.
Yes,
and you think
absolutely, and I think, yes, so absolutely. May I just say that's a real important statement, is that there's me saying, look at the Ptolemaic stuff. Well, that's extreme. That's not even, you know, that's one after a huge amount of Greek influence. It should, you know, and so on. I think a lot came out of there. And one thing I do believe, and this is perhaps, this may actually get to the crux of some of this matter. I heard a story once of an Egyptologist. Sorry, I heard a story of an archaeologist who found Troy by following the directions in the Iliad. So he just took it to be correct and actually found them. My word, so this text had been handed down, you know, generation after generation, and it was accurate. I happen to believe that we're very good at passing things down accurately, and that people don't tend to be as innovative and change things as much as you might expect. So there's me trusting yogis that, you know, have hundreds of years ago written down some instructions that they say comes from hundreds of years before them, and I'm saying it's working for me and I believe it. I have a sense that a lot of the teachings that are now reflected in those Platonic philosophies and in the pre-Socratic philosophers may well have come from Egypt, and I find it very inspirational. So just the presence of some of their items, the way they do things with story and with focus. And if you're a practitioner, you can see what they're doing, how they're getting into that very focused state of mind, where they use their sort of a story that's got a beat to it and a story that's got a power to it, to the point where at the end of it, you feel like either what they say is going to happen, or the whole of the universe will end. You know, that's the kind of feel you get to it. So I think with they don't meditate, we've got a kind of terminological concern there. I do also think, though it's hard, isn't it, with Egypt, because people dream so much. You know, I have seen a text, I'll have to search it out, where someone did you see a lot of depictions in Egypt which may imply, you know, things like the life force coming from the hand and so on. And I think they did go through some of these instructions and sort of what the priest was meant to be doing. And I think one of them did have a clear your mind, don't think, be silent in your mouth, be silent in your head to it. I have to search that out. May I also say that there's very few cultures I know of that don't have a form of concentrative, you know, concentration practice. And it sometimes comes in different forms, but sort of prayer and samadhi get a bit close when you really analyze them. And as I said, mantra and incantation a bit close. So yes, I'd be extremely surprised. Yeah.
We have the car as seeming to represent the vital force. We have a form of contractions upon actual stars and the rhythms of stars and that kind of thing. Obviously, we can see it's very old, it's very shamanic, and different temples, different traditions. Like I said, so much has been lost. Every now and then, I love those golden moments. You just catch an essence there of, you know.
So yeah, so I mean, let's talk a little bit about so we've got these parts of the soul, this ka, ba, and akha, and these are quite hard to quite get exactly what they mean behind them. So that sort of ka, which has this hand position, in different texts, this is kind of like your bodily kind of energy. So it's kind of like the body energy, but it's kind of also sometimes also has what you like and what you don't like in it. So is it kind of your passions? In other works, the ka seems to be the bit that does the talking, but in others it can't talk. It's the ba that talks. And the bar certainly has a face on it, and the bar's got a quality of movement around the place. So I think they're borderlines. It's a bit like you get the same when you compare Chinese things. You know, the Chinese have got the Shen, the Qi, and the Jing. And the Jing is kind of like your lower hormone energy. And you think, well, what's that? What's my lower hormone energy? That's a bit hard to. It's kind of like your vavavoom. And I think with the Egyptian things, they're very inspirational and very powerful. And they certainly, incidentally, with that ka and ba, there's certainly these two join after your death to make this akka. So this is definitely a kind of a union that causes a new permanent state, but that appears to be happening.
It does.
You're not here.
With the theory section of initiation into Hermetics, or at least it does to me. It's close enough.
Yeah. So, but there's an important thing is Franz Bardon believed in a perennial tradition. So he believed this underlying truth, and there's where it gets. This is where my position is. and this is why it can be frustrating to people who aren't looking at the same things. I believe there is an objective truth behind the forces that we're talking about. They are true in the same sense that you could find the different sort of organs in the human body, or that you could find the elements, as in, you know, the periodic table. So when I look at different people talking about them, I expect there to be some kind of blur line and cultural differences on things. You know, even the diagrams now between where our stomach is are different in different countries, and that's quite surprising. You know, I'm told that in Chinese medical text, the stomach is kind of like a tube, where it's a sack to us. Maybe it's about how much you eat, I don't know. But I'm expecting there to be some differences. So when I look at the Egyptian writings, I'm pretty sure I know what they're saying a lot of the time. And I don't get me wrong, I think there's some cultural weirdness. I'm not sure if the weirdness is my side or their side, and I try to think of it from their point of view.
Yeah, no, it's good to bring things back to that, and that's helpful to me as well as your student, because I know that sometimes I will fall lovingly into a kind of religious mode, and that I need that at times, and it's beautiful. So it's good to also have this kind of, right, let's step back and you know, see what's really happening within the body, within the psyche. How does this relate? So, you know, running those two things together is really beneficial. So what do you think? I'll stop the recording and we'll take a short break and
okay, wonderful.
Come back for a couple more.
Certainly.
Okay, right, we're back. So these questions relate to the burgeoning popularity of the system exposed by Franz Bardon. So right, number 7. What would you say to those who claim that initiation into Hermetics can be completed in just a few weeks?
Well, I would, first of all, I'd be surprised to hear such a statement. And as even some of the processes that need to be done as part of the training in certain steps would take weeks themselves. So there are certain things, creating gestures and breathing. So first and foremost, if you're actually doing it, that's certainly an incorrect statement. It's not possible if you actually do everything listed. Secondly, I'd say, well, there's a phenomena. Okay, so if you start to do any of this training, you'll find there are aspects of you that try to make it easier. Okay, it's human nature to do this. Someone does a pull up, they put their head, they stretch their head, can get confused between the goal and the marker of the goal, if you get my drift. So there are all sorts of ways where your mind can be a bit tricky. My Japanese teacher actually once used a term, he said, came up with tricky ways to be lazy. And I'd be very concerned about anything that encouraged that. Now you'll see this in many traditions where people offer a wish fulfillment. So they say, good news, you don't need to do hours of Zen sitting to achieve the Zen mastery. You can just do this instead. So I would be concerned to hear anyone make that statement. And also, I'd like to see a demonstration So if someone said, wow, this could all be achieved in just some weeks, well, that person most certainly is saying that Franz Bardon is incorrect in his assessment of things. You can see, he used to, have students that took certain times, and we even have from letters that he'd be able to say, well, you're on this step and give us a bit more time. But I'd also wonder about why the hurry? Why are we concerned about the speed here? And maybe this could lead on to some other things I'm saying. Have a look around and just be cautious of anyone who is saying, well, you don't need to do this, a certain thing that's described, or this can be done easier. There's again, back to Zen, there's a saying that for a great master, the traditional route is a triviality. So let's be a bit cautious about any claim that you can cut corners. So I would suspect that the person saying that has probably lowered their standards as to what doing the steps means.
Absolutely.
I think that's the answer.
I appreciate that, Martin. I think that needs to be tackled. And this is a related question here. What are the pitfalls of transmissions concerning inner work, emphasis on work, and longevity or not of the effect upon the recipient?
Oh. Tell me a bit what you mean by transmissions. Yeah, transmission.
So, I mean, this doesn't just exist in the, it's funny, we call it the Franz Bardon tradition. It's sometimes I feel that we should have another word for it, but obviously that gets straight to the point. The tradition, did I say exposed earlier? I meant expounded by Franz Bardon. You're going to hear these, or you're going to come across these offers of pay a bit of money and I'll psychically influence you. I'll you a little bit. So the implication is that person doesn't have to do the inner work in order to achieve the benefits. Therefore, that's obviously creating a habit and a culture of wanting things too quickly. And then the implication is as well is that either going to wear off or negatively affect the long-term progress?
Okay, so let's talk about transmissions in general. So please be aware, I haven't seen this in relation to Franz Bardon, but I have seen this in Oriental traditions. So let's talk about in connection with Franz Bardon. What does he say about this? Well, he does talk about a process where a teacher and a student kind of link together. And this is a Tibetan process. And the student really aspires towards the teacher, and the teacher really blesses the student. And this is a very delicate, close process. I've only ever seen this between teacher and student in India. And this is normally a live-in situation. So this would be, you come and stay in my sort of spare room and we train together in the morning and the evening. And that's actually some things I've done, but never with this kind of exercise. So that kind of direct transmission, and that's good because if you sit with someone, you can kind of pick up on how they do it in a way you don't know you can pick up on how they do it. It's like there's a higher part of yourself, a more observant part. You can feel their pace of breathing, you can see their position, and that aspiring to someone and that sort of beaming down, that's a very, very good thing. But it's a very rare, tricky thing to do. Franz Bardon himself, he mentions some opportunities for a teacher to bless their student. There's a possible creating a kind of force beyond yourself and sending that forth. And he says you could use this to help a student develop their cognition and or their abilities on some level. Now, I once asked about this, and it's quite funny. So I once asked, and I said, "What did Franz Bardon use these techniques and others to help students?" He said, "What? No. What do you mean, make things easier for students?" No, he'd give you, there'd be no, come back. No, he would create things to make things harder for students, not easier. And when I was in the Czech Republic, I asked about it, they thought it was ludicrous, the idea that you'd use something like this. He listed that as an emergency technique for a personal student who was stuck. We also do know, however, Bardon used the mirror for healing, but it was for the sleeping person, that was a very, very good thing. Now, here's an important thing. So I've talked about these methods that he mentions, methods I've heard of that worked, you know, with very close techniques. I think we must be cautious, perhaps we were talking about the bit before, about anything that promises a shortcut. So a blessing would be a very powerful thing. But let's imagine right now I was going to say, right, I'm going to bless you, William, with a very powerful force. Anything that's effective may well have a big effect. So I want to know you. I want to know how you're thinking, what you're doing. One of the reasons why we're very systematic with this is because it's actually explained in Bardon's text very clearly, is that if you come into contact with these forces before you are ready, you can kind of blow a gasket. You know, it's a bit like if I turn the electricity up on a circuit and it wasn't ready for it. So I suppose I'd be more concerned about an effective sort of transmission of a big energy than I would be an ineffective one, especially if it was willy-nilly, if it was a bit like, you know, the church exchange favours. Here's what I've seen in this place. I've seen in the occult or the esoteric Buddhist tradition, I've seen transmissions where they pay for a teacher to give a transmission of an ability or a power or something. And I have watched carefully afterwards, and sometimes the transmission has claimed a real bold thing. You know, it said, well, this is going to help the person gain great physical strength, or this is going to gain the person gain this sort of ability. And when I've said to the person afterwards, it's a bit like, you know, in those healing churches where the person is in the wheelchair and they say, stand up, and they do stand up when they're there. But it turns out they could always stand up a bit. And when I say to them, has that worked? They come up with an analogous, subtle way. So they say, well, it didn't give me the physical strength, but it gave me an inner strength to carry on. So I suppose what I'm saying about transmissions I've seen so far haven't been effective to the standards that I would want to see in them. And I'm concerned about anything avoiding this beautiful work. Why are we not doing this ourselves? That person with the blessing, let's imagine this person's giving this wonderful blessing and they can't be with you all the time, and you know, they have to be quite cautious. So it's not anything I would sort of see as a part of our practice. I think you're better off going to see the person and sit with them, and also I always wonder, you know, it's a bit like you see these people, don't you, where they say, I know how to make huge amounts of money from the stock market. You say, wow, and they say, give me $1,000 and I'll show you.
Yeah.
Well, if you know how to make an amazing amount of money from the stock market, why do you need my $1,000?
Yep.
Why are you selling this? And in fact, why just keep it to yourself? So I suppose in this, there might be an equation in my mind, but again, I'm open to be educated. That you mentioned paying for it. I kind of imagine, wow, if you've got the power that you can evolve someone from a distance, you probably don't need any income either. You're probably in that sort of.
It reminds me, you were speaking about how intentions are bound up in these actions. Give me a moment to think. If you were to perhaps heal someone, but secretly you wanted to impress them with your ability, that need would get bound up in the charge, and it would be impure in a way.
Okay, so yeah, so I mean, I would suspect in this discipline the person would have learnt to sort of draw it directly. So hopefully it's not going through them. And you know, it is possible to bring blessings and so on. If it is going to be you, it is very important, and this is an important thing in general. I mean, before I do anything, I really have a deep think about why I'm thinking of doing it. I mean, any sort of undertaking using these skills.
Very good general life advice there.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And because I often find my initial motive has got other layers to it. So I need to just make sure that's purified. So I think we're talking about, you know, let's imagine I thought, well, I want to heal this person. I'll think about that. And sometimes there'll be some mixed motives. I think, well, and I'll imagine them saying, oh, Martin, you're so great. I think, hang on a second. So there's some form of wanting to be impressive there. We've got to get that out of the system before we can even go any further on this, because your intention goes into the things you do, and even these subtle layers of things. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, are there other people who could, you know, are doing these things from just pure good intentions? Yeah, I think there are probably people calling things, you know, but other people have got mixed things going on. I can understand that could happen, especially, yeah. So we've got to all check ourselves first.
Okay, I appreciate that, Martin, and those were my questions. And the way I see it is that anyone who sets themselves up as a teacher in these fields should not be afraid to answer any questions. So thank you for that. And we're going to move on now. We've got one question left, really, before we move on to the emphasis on books or websites or whatever. And this is perhaps for those people who they might listen to something like this and various other videos and think, oh, I'm not ready. My life's bad. You know, the things are not in the right place now. Or so for those who feel trapped or under extreme pressure in life, are there advantages to a situation of poverty or restriction in spiritual undertakings?
Okay, so first and foremost, may I say that in my experience, this path is the path of empowerment. And it may be that we don't have the talents some other people have. It may be we're not born with the wealth other people don't have, you know, that other people have. It may be that we're in situations of hardship to begin with. So this is an important thing to keep in mind, that this is a way that you can evolve beyond your starting point. And that's what it's been like for me. So I wasn't born with great academic ability, and but undeveloped, or with any sort of super talents. But this path works on all levels, and some of it is vibrational, some of it is inspirational, but a lot of it is ability. You can gain ability to control your own mind. The Kali Cosmo, one of the first Hermetic texts, it's the most, you'll love this, William, because it's the most Egyptian of the Hermetic texts. We've only got a fragment. In that text, these skills are how we deal with the nasty humans. So the spirits that have incarnated and been put in the body are here. They can see everyone else killing each other and ripping the place up and the whole world's a bit too harsh and hard for them. So there's a secret process sort of put into the universe, and this is it can be interpreted a different way, but it's a hidden skill in the universe, and it's the ability that if your mind focuses on something, you can become at one with it. You can gain abilities, and you can influence the thing you're contemplating. That's actually put for the gentle, sensitive, thoughtful people to protect themselves against the hardship of the, orc-like monkey creatures that are ruling the world. So to someone in those circumstances, it's very easy for someone to say this is special training from outside. And I said it with compassion. It is special training that universe has given you. And I try to view, as I said, the universe as my training partner. Use these skills. Now, here's an important thing. Use these skills to change it as well. And because it's quite, a lot of these positions are quite hard to get out of, and escape plans might be a bit scary as well, but use these skills. You'll be able to focus more, you'll be able to remember more, you'll have more discipline, you've got supernatural levels of willpower and ability. Get yourself out of that realm to the next. And actually there's a staged thing to this, so often the situations I believe you described of hardship were of poverty and restriction. The stage just above poverty isn't much better. It's a real battling environment, and there's often a step back before you can go forwards with these things. You've got to, as soon as you start earning, there's a lot of things to pay, that kind of thing. So it may be that you need to go through a few of these rings to get further on. Use the power to correct the mind. Use the power to focus the thoughts. This is a way for you to move there, and for you to help others. People say money does not buy happiness. That might be true. But one thing I do know is poverty does bring misery. There's no two ways about that. And this is something that, even if you're detached and austere, you should be working to overcome the best you can. Use these secret skills.
Keep pushing for something better. The harder you apply yourself, the greater the reward. And I really appreciate that, Martin. And so that brings us to the sort of standard. Are there any books, videos, or products of yours that you would like to highlight for the viewer before we close tonight?
Oh, how wonderful. Yes. So if you're interested in the mechanics and the approach I'm talking about, my book, The Emerald Tablet, would probably be the best. If you're more interested in how to live a life like this, enlightened living, have a look at my website, have a look at my YouTube channel, and you'll see how this whole exercise progresses. You'll be able to see this undertaking, whether I can continue to improve in terms of the regeneration and that practice. And may I say, Broderick, it's been lovely being on here, and maybe we can do this again. There's some subjects that we could talk about specifically. We did a lot of rejuvenation, and at the end we started to touch on some really interesting questions. One thing you mentioned, try me and test me. To people willing to answer questions. One endeavour I'm hoping to always maintain is this. There's a lot of ways in life to people try to appear impressive and brilliant. They have great titles and flamboyant things, and tell wonderful tales, or enhance their status, by maybe there's a past life or a great teacher they've got and everything. I hope to be able to be genuinely judged on just who I am. And I think that's a really wonderful thing, because that means that my shortcomings, are visible, and I can learn if someone says, oh, you could improve that. But hopefully, if these things are working, yes, then you'll be able to see the effect of them, so you can see an honest assessment of the skills and these abilities for someone who's very dedicated. So to know the truth, you have to be the truth.
Wonderful, and that's a great way to end. So I will say, Martin Faulks, thank you very much.
It's been an honour.
MF delivers the goods, and I knew he would. Give yourself permission, give yourself that compassion to start looking after yourself, in order that you may take care of business and look after those you love, whilst at the same time directing yourself in the direction of your true will. Yeah, we could pick all that apart, and of course I have much compassion for all the different and varied harrowing circumstances that afflict people all over the earth, but it's already complicated enough. Choices, right? If you're really interested, I would say seek out those who demonstrate ability and sit next to them in meditation. You may be surprised. Take care of yourselves out there, and best wishes. For those interested in beginning or perhaps refreshing Hermetic training, please see the link down below for Seshen Circle, Blue Bell Hill. Thank you so much.